What if the greatest comeback in Hollywood history belonged to a man who had lost absolutely everything? Not just his career, not just his money, his freedom, his dignity, his health, his hope. What if the actor who would one day earn $500 million dollars from a single film franchise had once been so broken that a judge told him he was a danger to himself and to everyone around him? And what if, against every odd, against every prediction, against the entire world's expectation, he came back, not just to survive, but to become the most beloved superhero character in the history of cinema? This is the story of Robert Downey Jr., and it is one of the greatest redemption stories ever told. April 4th, 1965, Manhattan, New York City. Robert John Downey Jr. was born into a family where creativity was the air that everyone breathed. His father, Robert Downey Sr., was an underground filmmaker, unconventional, brilliant, and deeply troubled. His mother, Elsie Ann Ford, was an actress. From the very first moment of his life, Robert was inside a story. Cameras, actors, sets, scripts. This was not a hobby in their household. It was existence. And his father made one decision early on that would shape everything that followed. When Robert was just 6 years old, his father gave him marijuana to smoke. He thought it was bonding. He thought it was cool. What it actually was, and was the beginning of a dependency that would nearly destroy his son's life over the next 3 decades. Robert made his first film appearance at 5 years old in one of his father's movies. By 8, he was performing regularly. By the time he was a teenager, he was already inside the machinery of Hollywood. Not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged there. He attended the prestigious Santa Monica High School. He dropped out at 16 to pursue acting full-time and moved to New York. He studied at the Actors Studio. He was raw, electric, and impossible to ignore on stage. He got his first major break on the sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live in 1985. Small but meaningful film roles followed, and then in 1987 came the performance that made everyone pay attention. Less Than Zero, a film about drug addiction and moral collapse in wealthy Los Angeles. Robert played Julian, a young man destroying himself with cocaine and desperation. The performance was haunting. Critics said he was not acting. They were more right than they knew. The role that introduced him to the world as a serious, dramatic actor was the role that most closely mirrored the life he was already secretly living. In 1992, he received his first Academy Award nomination for Best Actor for his portrayal of Charlie Chaplin in Chaplin. He was 26 years old. The entire industry believed he was the most gifted actor of his generation. He had everything in front of him, and then he began to lose it all. The addiction accelerated through the 90s. Cocaine, heroin, alcohol. The substances changed, but the dependency never did. His behavior became unpredictable. His reliability on set collapsed. In 1996, he was arrested for possession of heroin, cocaine, and an unloaded pistol. In 1997, he wandered into a neighbor's home while intoxicated and passed out in their child's bed. In 1999, he missed a required drug test and was sentenced to 3 years in California State Prison. He served 1 year, he was released, he relapsed, he was arrested again. A judge looked at him across a courtroom and said the words that should have been the end of everything, that Robert Downey Jr. was like a car racing toward a cliff with no brakes and no driver. Studios stopped returning his calls. Insurers refused to cover his projects. He was, by every measurable standard, finished. But he was not finished. Because in 2003, something happened that changed the entire trajectory of his life. A producer named Susan Levin met him on the set of the film Gothica. She saw something that the rest of the world had stopped looking for. She saw the real person underneath the destruction. They fell in love. Susan gave him an ultimatum that was also a lifeline. Get clean or lose her. And for the first time in his life, Robert Downey Jr. had a reason that was stronger than the addiction. He entered rehabilitation with a commitment he had never found before. He began practicing Wing Chun Kung Fu. He began meditating. He rebuilt himself from the inside with the same intensity that had previously destroyed him from the inside. He married Susan in 2005, and then came the phone call that no one, including Robert himself, ever expected. Marvel Studios was developing a film called Iron Man. They needed someone to play Tony Stark, a brilliant, arrogant, charming, deeply flawed genius who finds redemption through sacrifice. Every major studio executive said Robert Downey Jr. was too risky, too damaged, too unreliable. Marvel's director Jon Favreau fought for him personally. He insisted that the only person on Earth who could play a man rebuilding himself from destruction was a man who had actually done it. He was right. In 2008, Iron Man was released. It earned over $500 million globally. Robert Downey Jr. did not just play Tony Stark, he became him. The wit, the pain beneath the armor, the desperate need to be worthy. Every frame of that performance was soaked in real lived experience, and audiences felt it in a way they had never felt a superhero before. What followed was the most lucrative comeback in Hollywood history. Iron Man 2, The Avengers. Iron Man 3, Avengers Age of Ultron. Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War. And then, in 2019, Avengers Endgame. The highest-grossing film in cinema history at the time of its release. Robert Downey Jr. earned a reported $500 million from his Marvel contract when all back-end profits, box office bonuses, and merchandise royalties are included. He became the highest-paid actor in Hollywood. The man that no studio would insure in 2001 was by 2019 the single most valuable performer in the history of superhero cinema. His net worth today is estimated at over $300 million. He earns through ongoing Marvel royalties and future appearances. He produces through his production company, Team Downey, alongside Susan. He has major brand partnership deals. He has invested significantly in technology companies, including artificial intelligence ventures. He won his first Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 2024 for his performance in Oppenheimer. A moment the entire audience greeted with a standing ovation that felt less like an award ceremony and more like a collective exhale of relief and joy for a man the world had never stopped rooting for. He owns a stunning estate in the Hamptons and a beautiful ranch-style home in Malibu overlooking the Pacific Ocean. His car collection is extraordinary. Vintage Audis, classic American muscle cars, and custom vehicles that reflect a man who genuinely loves beautiful machines. He travels privately. He lives beautifully. But those who know him describe someone who holds none of it too tightly. Someone who remembers precisely what it felt like to have nothing and carries that memory every single day as both a warning and a gift. Susan Downey is not just his wife. She is, by his own repeated public admission, the reason he is alive. They have 2 children together, Exton and Avery. He also has a son, Indio, from his first marriage. He has spoken about family with a rawness and a gratitude that is impossible to manufacture. He knows what he almost threw away. He knows what was almost taken from him by the version of himself he used to be. And he is grateful, visibly, genuinely, uncomplicatedly grateful, every single day. Now here are 5 things about Robert Downey Jr. that most people do not know. He trained so extensively in Wing Chun Kung Fu during his recovery that he became genuinely accomplished. He has practiced it for over 20 years and credits it as one of the primary tools of his sobriety. He auditioned for the role of Ferris Bueller in 1986 and lost it to Matthew Broderick, a loss that may have redirected his entire early career. He has a photographic memory that directors and co-stars consistently describe as extraordinary. He can read a script once and recall it almost perfectly days later. He was voted the sexiest man alive by People magazine in 2008, the same year Iron Man was released and 3 years after most people believed his career was permanently finished. And he once reportedly refused a $50 million payday for a film because he did not believe in the project. A decision that speaks to a man who learned through loss exactly what actually matters. Here is what the story of Robert Downey Jr. truly means. He was given every gift: talent, intelligence, charm, a famous name, and access to the greatest creative industry on earth. He destroyed it all, not slowly, catastrophically. He sat in a prison cell. He sat in courtrooms. He sat in rooms where the only honest question was whether he would survive the night. And from the absolute bottom of everything, he rebuilt. Not back to where he was, further, higher, greater, into something the world had never seen before. Because that is what second chances look like when someone is brave enough to take them seriously. Not a quiet return, not a careful step back into the light, a full, blazing, armor-clad, world-changing entrance. I am Iron Man. He said those words on screen, but the truth is, he had been building that armor his entire life, one scar at a time.